Hey, what's up guys? Drew here over at RevHiker Outdoors. I'm here with Will from the Adventurous Gentleman, and we're going to be talking about some basic bushcraft or bushcraft for beginners. And this episode we're going to be talking about
knives.
Knives. Of course, knives. It's like the central thing for bushcraft. And we're going to talk about how to
select one, the different styles of knives, and what you would use a knife for. Basically, the reason we're starting with knives is if you don't have one and you're out in the woods trying to survive, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah. So I think knives are like the central kind of tool, the central thing for bushcraft, and everything else kind of stems off of that. If you can get your knife and your knife skills set up, then you're going to be good to go. And so we're going to try to make this a series. We're going to talk about which knife you should get, talk about knife skills, fire skills, all that stuff, and we're going to just kind of build as we go. So got a cool episode today. We're going to spread some knives out and check them out. So stick around, guys. It's going to be a good one. Okay guys, so here we have some knives for your consideration. And right off the bat, I just want to go through types of knives. We're talking about how to select a good bushcraft knife. A lot of it's going to come down to personal preference, but there are some generalities that you can look for. So let's go through some of the types of these. What I've got here, these first four knives, these are considered Scandinavian grinds. And you can tell because there won't be a secondary bevel on the edge, okay? So if you look at these two, you can see that here's the main grind on this, and then you have a little secondary bevel. But the main grind, this is also called a zero grind, goes straight down to the edge, and your edge is this entire thing. So when you sharpen this, you're sharpening this whole surface, okay? Scandinavian grinds are kind of widely considered to be top choice for bushcraft. They bite really hard, they can take off big chunks of wood, but you can also do very fine shavings with them for feather sticks and that type of a thing. And they're really easy to maintain because you lay this whole big surface on the sharpening stone at the same time. So there's no kind of guessing. You'll feel when it's flat on there, and that's when you sharpen it. So Scandinavian grinds are kind of considered to be, you know, what most people choose for bushcraft. Then you have kind of these Scandi-Vex. So it's the same principle, except for it's not a totally flat grind that's coming like this. It's somewhat convex, okay? That usually gives them a little more durability as far as chipping resistance and stuff like that. And generally, convex or Scandi-Vex is used on lesser, like softer steels. They're still very easy to maintain with a strop in the field, just like these are. But they usually are used on lower grade steels like these Condors, which are a 1075 high carbon. It's a bit of a softer high carbon, but very easy to maintain and sharpen back up if they do get dull, which they will dull quicker than other steels. Next we have a full convex. Well, it's not a full convex. This is like a saber grind, and then this is all convexed. This is a Falkniven S1. This is another Swedish blade. These are also Swedish. But this is considerably more expensive. Will, why don't you tell us about this one, where you got this and what this is? This looks like a Damascus blade.
That's a Damascus blade that I picked up a while back for my wife because
she wanted it?
Yeah, it was kind of a self-gift, I think they're called.
Yeah.
And I picked it up because she had gotten into the outdoors, and that's the one she wanted, so that's the one I got. But we actually ordered it off Etsy. So it was a custom knife build from a guy there, and it was reasonably priced at like $150. Okay. Which I thought for a custom knife that had a little horn on it and was Damascus steel. I was going to say,
what type of horn is
Ram,
this? Okay, so this is ram horn. Got a nice bolster here and Damascus steel. So this actually brings us to our next grind type, which is a saber grind, which you can see the grind here. It's the main bevel, just like on this one, and then there's a secondary bevel. This is probably the most common that people are familiar with if you're just getting into bushcraft type knives. Most knives are some variation on a saber grind with a secondary bevel, okay? And this is a Benchmade Bushcrafter, and this is a saber grind with a secondary bevel. These are Essie's. These 4 are made by Essie, and Essie pretty much exclusively does full flat grinds. So the knife tapers from the very top of the spine all the way down to where the secondary bevel is. These are 1095 high carbon, but they are coated to prevent rust, since a high carbon blade will rust. This is Will's, this is mine. Maybe this shows like a difference in personality.
A little bit. A little bit.
And then these are also Will's. He kind of has a thing for bright knives, but I can't say too much because this bright orange Bushcrafter is mine as well, and it's got a bit of an orange sheath.
Well, here's something to consider too when buying a knife, and this speaks to the benefit of the brightness of that particular knife. I took it out my second day hunting with it, and it had come unattached from my pack, and I didn't notice it until I got home.
Oh man.
So I had to walk back in about 20 minutes later. Because of that bright handle, I was able to easily find it in the woods.
Yeah, and that's definitely a consideration. I know it's part of the reason I love this, because if you drop it or you set it down, it's really easy to find. You know, some of these muted colors might be prettier, like these wood handles and stuff, but yeah, it definitely makes it harder to find.
And let's talk handles a little bit. I mean, the blade is obviously what draws most people into the knife, but the handle can be just as important, especially if you're going to be using it over and over and over again. Yeah,
absolutely, because Bushcraft, the blade is the most important. For me, the type of steel and the type of grind is very important, but if it's not comfortable, it's useless.
It's useless.
Yeah,
it's
useless. If you're getting hot spots and blisters from you know, just kind of romping on these things, it's not good. And I mean, you know, if you get blisters because, you know, your hands are as soft as a liberal's foreign policy, that's different. But if your hands are tough and you're getting hot spots, you know, well, you thought that was funny?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I wonder if I should edit that out.
Yeah, you're right. That was going to stay in mine. That'll be going in yours.
Let's see. Yeah, the handle is important. So I would encourage you guys, if you have friends that are into this, definitely try to handle them before you buy them.
And if you had to pick a favorite handle out of all these knives here, which would it be?
Oh, this is really tough. Okay, so I really like this Essie, and it doesn't make sense because they're just essentially flat slabs of linen micarta, but this is just, I love the grip on this, and I don't get any hot spots working with it. I processed a few deer this year with it, and it was just great, done plenty of carving. Love this Bushcrafter, but the handle has a few things that I might sand down and change. This Falkneven is really comfortable, and again, it's one of those thinner handles, and most people like a little bit thicker, but I carved with this thing one time for like 3 hours when I was homesick, and I got no blisters, no hot spots. It was great. So I'm going to say it's between the Falkneven and any Mora that you buy. Any Mora is ridiculously comfortable. I mean, pick one of those up, Will. It's, you know, they're ugly, and
they are ugly as sin.
They're ugly as anything, but they work so good, and they're so cheap. You know, so for me, but you know what, this is really good too. This is a Heli. This is the Temagami, right?
Yes, the Les Stroud edition.
Yeah, Les Stroud edition. This is Will's knife, and I sharpened it up for him a little while ago, and yeah, this is very comfortable as well. I believe this is birch.
Yep, and the only downside, actually I think it might be burl maple. I'm going to have to look that up because I forget. But the only downside I have found to this is if you are going to be doing a little more than bushcraft, like skinning or gutting an animal, this handle will get a little slippery as you get along with the job and can be kind of tough to hold on to. So that's one thing to consider too is, you know, are you doing a knife for just bushcraft, which this series is on, but also consider what more might you be doing with your knife.
Yeah, exactly. So we've gone through kind of blade styles, we've gone through some of the grinds, we've gone through some of the handles. you know, these are all things that you need to take into consideration. Are you going for more like aesthetically pleasing with the wood, because these obviously look great, but you know, like with these condors, I mean, this one is quite comfortable. This is the Nesmic. This is really comfortable, but you know, maybe not. I don't know.
This condor, I think, is one of the prettier blades I've seen.
Yeah, I really like that shape. But to be honest, for some of the Bushcraft tasks, that sloping nose there, the tip, doesn't work the greatest if you're somebody who's gonna like to baton and stuff like that. Maybe the last thing to consider is size.
Yeah, that is a big factor depending on your task.
Yeah, and a lot of these are similar. You know, we've got these Azulas are a little bit small. This is the Azula 2. Right?
That's the Azula 1 on the left, the Azula 2 on the right, and a lot of times guys will also combine that with the, I think it's Taito or Tito like 1.1, which is like for if you're doing a lot of game meat work, you know, butchering and skinning, they will pair those up, and a lot of times, because it's the lightweight and the versatility of both those knives combined, might give you a little more than, say, what just one bigger knife on its own will do. Yeah, and you know, that's the other thing. A lot of people like bringing more than one knife, and I'm that way too. Yeah, I like for bushcraft, I like to have a bit of a larger knife, and then something smaller for really fine stuff. A sidekick, if you will. Yeah, you know, it's a lot of times they're referred to as a companion blade, and I think that's a good policy to have. But if I was just going to take one, I'd want something a little bit bigger. I don't like any of these whopper choppers with the 8, 9, 10-inch blades. They're no good at the bushcraft stuff. You know, carving notches and doing certain smaller tasks, making feather sticks, making shavings, processing, you know, small pieces of wood, you know, carving notches, making traps, stuff like that. They're really not any good. If perhaps, you know, you grew up in South America, to some of the places that the Randall's adventure training goes to, and you spent all your life working with a machete, you know, you can really finely tune things with a machete, then go for a bigger knife. But for general purpose, everyday North American bushcraft, this is the range you're going to be looking at. Yeah, I would say so. And I'm looking, you know, like these SE3s, it's like a 3.5-inch blade. That's probably the low end of if I was just going to have one knife with me. This is the very low end of what I would want. And then I probably wouldn't want anything bigger than this Falcon even. And I believe this is a little over 5, I think it's 5.5. Which if you put those back to back, we're talking a game of centimeters here between the difference of what's considered a small bushcraft knife and a bigger bushcraft knife. Yeah, it's really not a lot. I mean, if you line up the cutting surfaces, you know, it's not a lot, but believe me, when you have this much flat surface versus this much flat surface before the belly starts, you know, it does make quite a bit of difference. So price, because that's going to be on everybody's mind. What do you have to pay for a good bushcraft blade? And I'm going to say for a good bushcraft blade, especially if you're just getting into it and you don't know if you're going to like it, $14 shipped, Amazon. More a companion. That's tough to beat. I think it's impossible. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's beating that at $14. Yeah. Especially because if you look at the reviews and how long this knife has been around, it's unreal. People love it. People love it, and it does the job, and it does it nearly every time. So yeah. And if you want a little more beef, if you don't like a blade this thin, which I'll tell you, I've done everything with this knife, and it has withstood it. But if you want something thinner, you can spend $30 to $35. You know, for a thicker that comes with a 90-degree spine and high vis. Or you can get the carbon bladed version, which is about the same price, and it's black handle, black blade. So $15 to $30 depending on your preference, and you are in the game. And you are absolutely in the game. And I promise you, when you take these out of the box, you will be absolutely blown away at the quality and the sharpness that you're getting for that price. It's stupid. And I mean, the difference is obviously just looking at them. The rubber handle obviously looks less expensive than some of these other handles. But other than that, if we were just to show people blades, I think they'd have a hard time picking out, not knowing of course, which one it was, that is a $15 or $30 blade.
If they were looking at blades alone, they would think that these two are the cheapest, because this is probably the lowest grade steel here at 1075. And you know, you can see a lot of the grind marks. I polished some of it out, but you know, these condors are nice. You're looking between 40 and 50 bucks for most condors. And they're good, and they come with nice, the sheaths on them are where your money is, because these are very heavy leather sheaths with a nice thick welt, and like, you know, this Swamp Romper comes with a nice dangler system and all that stuff. Whereas the Moras are going to come with these plastic type sheaths that have very good retention and are nearly bulletproof, but they're ugly as anything.
And
you know,
again, for another maybe 30 bucks, you can get a custom knife sheath for just about any knife, though, made out of Kydex with a little fire steel holder.
Yeah, exactly.
Not hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, for if you bought a companion for 14 bucks and you paid 30 bucks for a full custom Kydex that is exactly the way you want it with all kinds of extra junk on it,
you'd have an unstoppable force right there.
I mean, you're still under 50 bones.
Exactly.
You know, for a slamming knife. But, you know, one last thing to consider. This is a huge thing in the bushcraft community, and I can't believe I forgot this long, but it is the tang of the knife. So let's compare this. You can see this Benchmade Bushcrafter, one piece of steel, front to back, okay? One solid piece, you're never going to break this. These Moras have a thinner tang that only runs to about here. So that is a difference. You know, you're getting one heavy piece of steel that these handle scales are riveted or glued or whatever to, and then you have something like this where the tang thins out once it goes into the handle, and this is about a 3/4 tang. The Bushcraft has a little bit heavier tang, a little bit thicker metal, and some people say, oh, the Moras are going to snap, but truthfully, I have hammered this one into a stump sideways and stood on it. I have batoned, you know, the biggest wood that will fit this blade, just beat it through the wood to split it, and it has not broken. But a full tang knife, a lot of people say it's not a bushcraft knife unless it's full tang. These Condors, full tang. Falkneven, full tang. You can see the tang comes out the end here, and you got a nice little pommel for crushing stuff if you need to. Full tang, full tang, full tang, full tang, full tang.
Why don't you have any folding knives up here?
Folding knives are a good companion knife, and that's what I normally carry for a companion knife. But for a primary bushcraft knife, if you want to baton and do some of the heavier duty things, you're kind of looking at a failure point at the folding, at the pivot. So I know you had a friend that said, what did he say about folding knives?
He said folding knives are broken and you have to do something to make them work.
Yeah. Bushcraft is pretty much centrally focused on fixed blade knives. Maybe a last consideration real quick is, I can't remember if we
the spine, and
the
whether
spine.
or not it's going to throw a spark when it hits a ferrule rod.
Right. Some knives come with a good 90-degree spine that will throw sparks. Benchmade Bushcrafter, the Mora Bushcraft, they will throw it. This is Ahti Puukko. This is made in Finland. See, this one looks like it's 90, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't throw it nearly as well. The Swamp Romper, that's okay, but I think I filed that one down. This one, most of these work. The Falkneven won't do it on its own. I had to file this down, and now it throws them. I just burned a hole in your beautiful table.
That's alright, I can refinish it.
Okay. But yeah, a 90-degree spine is going to be very helpful for lighting fires. More companion, you're going to have to file it down to make it do that. But that's another consideration. All of these SEs come coated, so it's nearly impossible to do it on those. But to be fair, with the full flat grind, they're not traditionally what people think of for a bushcraft knife. But in my opinion, the SEs are definitely better suited for game than any Scandinavian grind. This is a much better hunting knife, in my opinion, for skinning and butchering and all that stuff.
And if you get into bushcraft at some point, that may be something you either choose to do or have to do when
right.
you're out there in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. So all things to be considered, but I think anything in here, I'd have no problem taking out into the woods because I've done it with all these, with the exception of this, but I trust this one because I've used it. This one would be questionable for me for bushcraft, only just because it's, I don't know enough about the steel. It's Damascus, yes, but
you know what that means.
Yeah.
Future test video.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do that. But, you know, I like a simple knife that's strong and has a good spine and a decent steel. And that's what you should really look for. And you should buy the best knife that you can afford. So if you can afford 14 bucks, you're going to get a great knife. If you can afford, you know, 150 or, you know, 180, you're going to get a better knife, bigger knife, stronger knife. But to be honest, these two are not as good at fine tasks and little stuff as that. So it's always a trade-off.
It is.
Compromise.
It is. And there's one neat feature too, if I recall, about the bench. Ah, never mind. I was incorrect. I thought for some reason this had the...
Oh, the bow drill?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, a lot of tops knives have those. So if you're making a bow drill fire, they've got a little divot so you can use your knife as the top brace.
I'm gonna have to get a tops knife now just for our future videos.
Some Essies have them too.
I know, jeez, should have got one.
Anyway, guys, I think this video has been long enough. I think next in our series is probably going to be fire making or some knife skills, because those are very, very important to bushcraft, and they're things that you can practice at home before you get out in the field.
That's right, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please post them in the video below. Yep. Or you can email me at adventurousgentleman@gmail.com, or
just best way to get me is either my email RevHiker@yahoo.com, or get on my Instagram @RevHiker and send me a direct message. I get back pretty quickly on that. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this helps you maybe select a knife. Sorry for it being so long, but I always have fun making videos with Will, and we talk too much.
I know, this could go on for an hour. Yeah. Let's just talk here.
Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe. Go check out Will at theadventurousgentleman.com. And God bless, guys. And